Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most beneficent. All praises are due to Allah the Almighty, of whom we ask to send His peace and blessings upon His final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is His final messenger, and so on. Brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode of Visual Addiction, a program that doesn't really intend or doesn't really expect that its beloved and dear viewers to be replenished or rehabilitated from pornographic addiction. Yet we are, by the grace of Allah, guiding you, leading you to the way, to the experts of whom will be able to refine that really bad habit, perverted acts and content, and will be able to replace it with that which pleases Allah the Almighty. With us, by the grace of Allah, is our beloved brother, Mr. Wa'il Ibrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. How are you today?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm doing very well, alhamdulillah. How is everything at your side?
Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless you. Thank you very much for asking, sir. And I'm very honored to once again be on another episode and learning from you firsthand. May Allah bless you. Brother, with your permission,
honor is ours, Habib.
May Allah bless you. With your permission, Mr. Wa'il, I would like to start by asking the advancement of technology and all. And of course, I just wanted to share a particular point. Pornographic content has actually had a very deep impact on the technological world, to the extent that it raised up the format wars, as many people have specified. They said that due to the pornographic industry, they started coming up with more technological advancements. So DVD to Blu-ray and all of these kind of formats today, that was due to the fact of pornographic requirement. There was a demand for it. And it really does, strike me as a surprise that such an industry, not only making billions of dollars today, but it's that really rooted even in today's technological world. So in today's technological advancement, the digital age, what are we learning from that?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You brought a very, very important point, Brother Mustafa. In fact, the pornographic industry, when they looked at the production of Hollywood and Bollywood, and they looked at what content they display and provide to the masses, they saw that they actually that was perhaps in the 90s or perhaps late 90s, early 2000 to 2005. They found out that these industries are actually competing with pornography. If you look at any of these production, you will see those movies are not as innocent as we thought they were. They include a lot of sexual scenes, a lot of nudity, a lot of immoralities and bad ideas that are impacting our children. So in fact, the porn industry and the producers, they decided to escalate their production to become more aggressive. And that's how they competed with this content of Hollywood and Bollywood and whatnot. To an extent that there was a research actually in 2010 where the researcher, it's a professor in a particular university, she and her team, they literally purchased the most popular pornographic films at that time. And they went through every scene, Brother Mustafa. I want you to imagine this with me, the hassle that they went through to come up with their conclusion. They went through every scene in those films, and they told us that nearly 90% of those scenes, not 90% of the films, 90% of the entire scenes that they have watched contain high aggression against women, whether physically and verbally. The problem is that our youth, our youngsters, our children, they go through or they go to these websites, walayadu billah, may Allah protect us all, ya Rab. without knowing all these things. All what they get is the products. All what they get are all these scenes. And as a result, these scenes twist the ideas and the innocence of our children. And when they grow up, unfortunately, they apply or they try to apply what they've been watching on their spouses. And from there comes the aggression against women in those, in our culture in general.
May Allah protect us all. Indeed, brother, there is a lot of my friends, like many people from amongst my friends, because again, I have a lot of connections and from different cultures, different, faith and so on. And what really strikes me odd is that one of my friends, very close person to me, he came up one day and said, when I get married, inshallah, and he said that he's a Muslim, he said that when I get married, then I want my wife and I, he said that, him and his wife, they want to practice watching these kind of content. He's not that really committed into following the prophetic path. And Allah knows best what's in his heart. I'm just saying in the general sense. And he said to me that, and since he told me that, until now, he was unable to commit to the marriage. So the person of whom he wanted to commit to, and they wanted to practice and role play, whatever scenes they would see together, then they wanted to do that as a lifestyle. And I noticed something from that particular person is that psychologically he was never stable. He was unstable at all. And this is that's how close it is, that when a person goes to the mosques and pray and he comes out, he wants to meet his friends. It's that really living amongst us. So what would you say the level of twisted imagination and fantasies, how does it really relate to the violence and the role plays that these people would be led to?
You just said it very well, brother. This is just an example. We receive calls nearly every day from wives in particular who are complaining about their husband's behavior in bed and how they treat them and how aggressive they are sometimes. And as soon as they mention this to us over the phone, we will know that they have problem with pornography. So they would say that, is it halal for my husband, for example, to slap me during intimacy? That's their concern. Look, is it halal or haram? They're not thinking that it is something, unacceptable or something like that. It's just, is it Islamically halal or haram? Sometimes choking happened during sexual intimacy. Sometimes pulling the hairs in a way that could actually hurt the neck of his wife and so on. And when we hear those stories, my brother Mustafa, we immediately know that there is a porn addiction problem here, that man is consumed with his porn use, and these are the type of pornography that he watches, which is, by the way, the majority of production of that industry is aggression against women. New Zealand have recognized that. Shout out to New Zealand, who have already recognized that pornography contributes to the rape culture and the aggression against women. Nepal, I mentioned in a previous episode, had banned pornography and said that the cases of rape and aggression against women had increased by 300% in the past 10 years. They have recognized that. My advice for our sisters who go through this is to immediately say no. Once you feel that something is wrong, something is awkward, is new to you, that you cannot bear. I received a phone call, brother, I will never forget that. 25 years old, newly married lady who said that her husband is asking her to perform certain positions that she cannot bear. Physically, it's impossible, she said. And without, of course, describing the details, she said that she felt suffocated while she is trying to please her husband. She couldn't bear. As a result, she said she hates sexual intimacy. She hates the moment where her husband calls her for intercourse. 25 years, she's still young. She should be enjoying this relationship with her husband, but rather because her husband is consumed with porn and these type of aggression that's been displayed in the films, she hated this relationship altogether. May Allah protect us all.
Allahumma ameen. I believe that the most or the most general or common kind of addiction is that of erotic asphyxiation and these kind of things. Of course, you are more well aware of these kind of things, of course, psychologically, how it impacts. Now, what really does disgust me personally, that people would belittle their wives. Their wives are holy partners. They are God given. They are not to be a whiteboard for your imagination. Especially, like, why not imagine, invest your fantasies in pleasing them in a way that is honorable to them, in a way that doesn't contradict what Allah had ordained upon us, but in fact they're too occupied in their twisted mentalities. May Allah protect us all. Is there another example that you can give us?
Beautiful. You hit a very, very important point, brother. And that will never happen unless both husbands and wives sit together and actually discuss these matters. But unfortunately, again, this is yet another taboo. You know, for a husband to reach out to his wife and try to tell her about his fantasy, the things that he wished to do in a halal manner, or the wife reaching out her husband to tell him, you know, these are the things that we should do together to enhance our relationship, you know, and the romance and the, you know, and because this is a pleasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created for us to enjoy. That's the main purpose, within, of course, the limits that He had, you know, described in the Quran or through the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is very important for us to discuss. There is no shame. I mean, if a husband don't discuss these issues with his beloved wife, where else will he go to discuss those issues? You see, otherwise we will be perverted. We will go to the opposite direction. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. So thank you for mentioning this point. It is important, if the imaginations hit someone and disturbed him, and if he's married, immediately rush to your wife, tell her, listen, I'm disturbed and I want to discuss those issues. I don't think there is any problem with that at all.
We would definitely have to continue from there on in further episodes, because we, with your permission, have reached to the first part of our episode. We're going out for a short break, and I believe I'll be continuing up on more sensitive topics, but the main sensitive one, will continue inshallah in next episode together. So until then, thank you very much, dear Sheikh, for your beloved presence. I really am learning and benefiting from your lessons, mashallah.
Jazakallah khairan. See you inshallah next episode.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Brothers and sisters, we're going off for a short break, and when we come back, inshallah, we're going to be continuing from the point of which brother Mr. Well and I have left off. It's a very sensitive part, so stay tuned, get your pens and paper ready, or I don't think you'll have the capability of writing whatever you're going to be hearing next. Enjoy your breaks. Welcome back, brothers and sisters. We hope you've enjoyed your breaks. And again, I keep repeating to myself, if you're not writing the points down, believe me, I don't need to write. I've been seeing the numbers. It really does lead us to like high expectations of violence, and the meaning of which will be more specified and elaborated by our wonderful guest, Mrs. Kailin Kerr, who to me, she is the, please correct me if I'm wrong, the NCIS of the entire field and expertise. So allow me to welcome her in the Islamic greeting. Assalamu alaikum, Mrs. Kailin. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
We're very honored with your presence today, and again, we want to learn from your experience. And to me, you're like the library that I can really take the examples of and share it with the public and community. What I've learned before from your end, I'm actually speaking with it about it with my family, ensuring that these things will be countermeasured or taking our precautionary measures. So thank you for being my teacher as well.
You're very welcome.
With your permission, Mrs. Kailin, now I wanted to touch on a really important matter, and that is, due to pornography, the kind of aggression and violence that's affecting, the people today. Can you share with us your insight?
Yes, certainly. In recent years, we have certainly seen a rise in gender-based violence, and when we look at particular expressions of gender inequality consistently predicting higher levels of violence against women, we know that that is the root cause of violence against women. And many people are asking, well, what could potentially be driving this? And we would suggest that the normalisation of the mainstream pornography that's available to our children and to our young people today is certainly having an effect. We know that pornography, the mainstream pornography that children and young people are being exposed to, does contain very high levels of aggression and violence against women.
So when a person goes up, like let's say for example, my wife now comes up to you, are you
Yeah.
like talking about forensics or any kind of law enforcement department? And the missus would go there and complain. You would be able to identify that these violent acts will be led to pornographic addiction, or am I misunderstanding?
No, so what we know is that the mainstream pornography that is available and that children and young people and adults are viewing contains high levels of violence. So we know that a study done of some of the most watched videos showed that 88% contained physical aggression. This physical aggression was overwhelmingly directed towards a female performer. And the physical aggression was things such as choking, gagging, slapping, hair pulling. And in nearly all cases, about 94% of the time, when the female pornography performer was choked or gagged or slapped, or one of these actions was undertaken on her, she reacted with a pleasurable or neutral response. So what we see is this tells the viewer, so the child or the young person, that choking, gagging, slapping, hair pulling, and these types of things are a normal part of sexual behaviour if someone else isn't talking to our children and young people. So then it's probably not surprising that in many countries we are seeing increases in non-consensual acts, coercive behaviours, choking, the gagging, the slapping, the spitting, hair pulling, and other things like this, name calling. We're definitely seeing increases. So we would suggest that the pornography content that people are consuming is normalising these violent, aggressive, and more coercive ways of having or engaging in sexual relationships with a partner.
Uh,
And so, yes,
no,
yep.
please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so it's probably then not surprising that when we talk to those that work in law enforcement, in health, in those that work with sexual assault victims, whether they're children or adults, that they are also reporting that the victims are being exposed to these high levels of aggression and violence during non-consensual sexual assaults, but also from time to time also within consensual relationships as well. And so this is really, really concerning.
With your permission, like that particular part, of course, I can no doubt, even though I'm not an expert in this field, but I can see it from my end. But what about
Yeah.
the indirect causes? Like, for example, when we speak to most women today and, teenagers, they would favor, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they would favor being with a person of the opposite sex who displays such like aggressive behavior when it comes to these kind of things. Am I understanding right, or this is an incorrect information?
So what we're finding is when young people have been interviewed, and they've been interviewed in Australia and the United Kingdom and many other countries also, what young people are saying is that boys and girls, when interviewed, will say that the boys, expect to pressure and coerce a female partner, and the girls or the female partner will say that they expect a boy to pressure or coerce them. They also, both boys and girls, acknowledge that there is an expectation that the sexual encounter will be painful for the girl but pleasurable for the boy. And even with our boys and girls knowing this, that is not deterring them from engaging in these types of more aggressive ways of having engaging in sexual relations with a partner. And so you can see that that's really concerning, because nobody is talking to our children or our young people and telling them that this content that they're watching is not real. It's a performance. And so when nobody is talking with our young people about this, quite uncomfortable topic, pornography, the performance of pornography by default becomes the only form of education that our young people have. And so this is why I think we're in a situation where it's really troubling that both boys and girls involved in consensual sexual activity have an expectation that it's going to be pleasurable for the boy, but not pleasurable necessarily for the girl. So I think that means that we've got quite a lot of conversation and education that's needed with our young people.
Can we say that these forms of acts or perverted content, they may lead to pleasurable sadistic kind of relationships?
Well, it certainly could lead that way. The reality, I think, though, is that I think boys and most males don't want to hurt a female partner. But when our children are first being exposed to pornography, and that exposure is now happening, let's say in Australia, it can be as low as 8 years of age. So our children and our young people are being exposed to this very aggressive and violent content, sometimes for 5 to 8 years before they've even been intimate with another human being. And so there is some possible suggestion that it can be affecting the way in which young people think about sex and their desires for sex. And that is absolutely happening when, as teachers or parents and other community members, we're not talking to our children about pornography being a performance. Look, there may be some people who do get pleasure from hurting another person, but I'd like to think that the vast majority of young males don't want to hurt a female. They want it to be good for them and also good for their partner, but they're not getting the education to show them how to do that.
How can we counter this matter in a more social sense? Like me being in Egypt, if I wanted to speak to the ministers and to complain to them, and tell them that we need to take an act on boycotting such websites, to abstain from any further expansion, or exposure, what would you advise me to do?
Well, I would certainly look to the research. There's large bodies of research that is showing that this unrestricted access to pornography is harmful for our children and young people. So there is a large body of research that you could use to when speaking to people that are in a more powerful position. We could also relay some of what we're learning, and that is, if we don't address this now, it is only going to get worse. And at the moment, it's quite, for many countries, and I'm sure that Egypt would not be that dissimilar to Australia and other parts around the world, where children's exposure to pornography is now usually in primary school. We also know that children that are displaying harmful sexual behaviours, or they're acting out on another child what they've seen in pornography, certainly in Australia, in some states that has doubled in the last 5 years. We also know here in Australia, children and young people that are in treatment for the harmful sexual behaviours that they've been displaying, about 75% of boys and 67% of girls say that their sexualisation or their early sexualisation came from pornography. So there's a range of conversations to be had. So, harmful sexual behaviours is one of those. Then also looking at the normalisation of coercive and, in many cases, aggressive sexual practices would be another avenue that I would use to discuss this.
We do understand each and every bit that you've explained now. Very wonderfully stated, very beneficial. May God bless you. And we do thank you for your presence today. Unfortunately, we have reached to the conclusion of our episode, But in the future, God willing, we'd be more than happy to have you with us. Thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Great.
There you have it, brothers and sisters. We have learned together that these kind of industries not only have an impact on the consumer, it has an impact as well in economics, the economics of an entire country. And it doesn't only go there, but it even reaches to your children. What more can you value than your children, brothers and sisters? Of course, we value the teachings of Allah, the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. We want the entire community, for both Muslims and non-Muslims, to be protected from these kind of harmful content. We ask Allah the Almighty to protect all of us from all forms of evil and harm. Allahumma ameen. Until then, brothers and sisters, I bid you farewell. Stay tuned, stay safe, and most of all, stay pious. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.